Authorities in Oklahoma say a leaking tanker truck spewed a hazardous gas at a hotel parking lot overnight. We get an update from correspondent Donna Warder.
Tanker truck parked in a hotel parking lot began leaking anhydrous ammonia gas. Anhydrous ammonia is used as fertilizer, but can burn people in its liquid or gaseous form. People nearby were evacuated, others were told to shelter in place, and several dozen people were taken to the hospital for difficulty breathing. At a news conference carried by KFOR, Weatherford Police Chief Angelo Orfici says the gas has dissipated, enough for people to return home.
The shelter in place has been lifted.
4 people in critical condition were transferred to other hospitals for further treatment. I'm Donna Warder.
And here are the numbers on Wall Street. The Dow down 696, the Nasdaq off 534, and the S&P 500 down 108 points. More of these stories at srnnews.com.
In God's Word, the Bible, in John chapter 3, verse 3, we have this word concerning the importance of new birth. Jesus answered and said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. God's emphasis upon the new birth in John 3:3.
VCY America is supported by gifts from our listeners. You may write VCY America, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Give so that others might hear.
VCY America is on the air. KBCX Gregory, WVIW Bridgeport. Online at vcyamerica.org.
History was made on today's date. Stay tuned for an American Minute with Bill Federer.
The Vietnam Memorial was dedicated this day, November 13th, 1982, honoring the 58,000 American troops who died. In 1966, Marine Sergeant George Hutchings of the 1st Battalion, 5th Marine Division, had over 200 men killed around him during an ambush by the Viet Cong. Shot 3 times, he was bayoneted and left for dead, for which he received the Purple Heart. Of the memorial, George Hutchings said, "On that wall is the name of Corporal Quentin Weiss, who was hit in the chest with a rocket while running a patrol in my place. A Christian, he had shared the gospel with me, but I didn't understand it till he gave his life in my place."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD. VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Friends, thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today here on the VCY America Network. And yes, no doubt you've heard the news. Government shutdown is over. That the legislation signed last night. A few of the House members joined with Republicans to open things back up once again. And so that process underway. No doubt we'll have more comments on tomorrow's news roundup. The Trump administration has taken some very direct action to bring safety and security to our nation by putting in some meaningful border control policies. In addition, they're finding ways to stop the free flow of illegal drugs into our nation and also to remove from our country those who've entered illegally and on top of that committing some very egregious crimes. We've seen some horrendous collisions taking place on our nation's roadways by those here illegally who've obtained CDL licenses from the likes of, well, like the California Department of Public Motor Vehicles, who've admitted recently to illegally issuing some 17,000 commercial driver's licenses to foreign nationals who are not legally eligible to hold them. And yet we have cities where Border Patrol agents have literally been met with stiff opposition. Even violent attacks have been leveled against them. The newly elected mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, has hinted that he may have New York police officers even arrest ICE agents. Well, with comments on these and other border-related issues, we welcome back Mark Krikorian. He is a nationally recognized expert on immigration issues, serving as the executive director of Center for Immigration Studies. They're an independent, nonpartisan research organization examining and critiquing the impact of immigration on the United States. He has testified many times before Congress and has also published articles on many outlets. Mark, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Mark, the government shutdown has not hindered at any means over the last multiple weeks the work of Department of Homeland Security, including border security or ICE apprehensions. No hindrance has gone on there, has it?
No, because usually law enforcement as well as the military keep working. They don't get paid, though.
Yeah.
So they've been working without pay, and then usually they'll get lump sum, back pay. But no, law enforcement has been going on, not just ICE, of course, but, FBI and everything else, absolutely.
Yeah, and we're now 10 months in the Trump administration, and let's talk about the numbers first. What is happening at the borders now? How many encounters are happening at the border? Where we're at today?
We're at the lowest levels of encounters at the border really ever. I mean, since the 60s is the lowest statistics, but back in the 60s, way more people got past the Border Patrol without anybody knowing. In other words, we have our eyes on the border are much better, and so we actually know what's happening at the border. We really do better than before, and so we are, I'm saying, we're at the lowest levels of illegal crossings at the border ever. I mean, ever since these kind of things have been counted.
Yeah. So are people in these encounters that are happening, are they being released into our society on any level?
No, Border Patrol isn't releasing anybody. Everybody is being handed over to ICE. Some people by an immigration judge will get bond, they'll be released on bond, but nobody's being let go at the border like there was under Biden.
Yeah.
Literally hundreds of thousands of people they took the picture, they said, okay, what's your name? They wrote it down, they gave them a piece of paper, and they said, have a nice day, and dropped them off at the bus station.
Wow.
That's not happening. That's zero now.
Yeah. Wow, what a difference. And the fact is, though, as you know, Mark, that there are millions that are already infiltrated all across the country, and daily I'm receiving these emails from Department of Homeland Security regarding apprehensions. Give us an idea of how many illegal aliens have been apprehended since President Trump took office.
Well, I mean, they're looking at maybe deporting. They're shooting for 1 million illegal immigrant deportations this year. I don't think they're going to make it, but, they could make it to 800,000 or so, which is way more than previous administrations. But it's more important, actually, than the ICE deportations are the self-deportation. Because our research, we did research January through July, and we're going to update it, but we haven't yet. And what it showed was that the total immigrant population in that 7-month period declined by 2.2 million. And of that decline, 1 million were illegal immigrants. Most of those people left on their own. That was self-deportation. And some of that happens all the time under normal circumstances, but obviously it's increased significantly under Trump because a lot of people, especially recent arrivals, are saying, look, this isn't going to work out. They're going to come and get me, so let's pack up and go home on our own before we get, arrested.
Are there still incentives for those who are self-deporting?
There are, although most people leaving are not taking those incentives. But Homeland Security has this thing where if you came in on that, what was called the CBP-1 app, they've renamed it now. If you came in with that, you can schedule your departure and get a $1,000 bonus at the end when you get home. And we don't have numbers on how many people have taken that yet. I think probably because it hasn't been that many, but I mean, it's in the thousands. But most of the people leaving on their own are just doing it because they're just doing it on their own. In other words, they're not being paid to do it. They're just, things have changed. And so they're wrapping up their affairs, packing up stuff, and going back home.
So can you give us your best guess, Mark, as to how many you believe are in the country here yet illegally? I know we don't know an exact number, but how many people would be here illegally, and what percentage of that would have been from the last 4 years of the Biden administration?
The total illegal population, it's a matter of contention. we try to come up with conservative numbers, and so we're probably looking at like 15 million, 14 to 15 now after the people, after the decrease that we've seen. And of that, a big share, maybe it's hard to say, but maybe a third of it is directly caused, maybe more, directly responsible of the Biden cause, or the Biden administration. I mean, he was a figurehead. So it's a huge share. And, I'm skeptical the Trump people are going to be able to get all of those people out, all of the ones who came just in the past 4 years.
Right.
They'll get a significant chunk of them out of the country. But, when you have a damaging policy like under Biden, that damage, you can undo a lot of it. You can't undo all of it. Some of this is just something we're going to have to live with, unfortunately.
Yeah. And we'll be talking a little bit later in our interview about some of the resistance that's been coming. Those deportations could be so much higher, but there is resistance coming from some major cities here across the nation. Just another status issue. What is the current nature of the border wall? How far away from completion? What is its status?
They're working on it, obviously, and completing the part that Congress, or the extent that Congress authorized. Mm-hmm. There's still like at least several hundred miles, I think, for them to finish. And the thing is, what do you mean by finish? Because a lot of people on the right have criticized the administration, even during the previous, the first Trump administration, that they weren't really extending the wall. They were just replacing stuff that was already there. Except what they replaced, and this often is the case, is, dilapidated some stuff that your grandma could climb over with a real 30-foot high. That's a new fence. And so there's still work to do, and there's always kind of new areas where the traffic moves, and they've got to build fence there that they didn't expect. But the point is, they've got probably I'm off the top of my head, I can't say, but they've probably got a couple hundred miles left that Congress had already authorized to finish. And they're working on it every day. It's just that under Biden, not only did he force a sort of stop work order, but all kinds of materials for the wall that were already purchased and were stacked up, ready to use, were sold off for scrap. So they have to kind of start all over again in some of these sections of wall by buying back or buying new, wall units after the old ones were, sold for scrap and melted down.
So in these areas, the hundreds of miles you speak of, is there any level of surveillance there at all?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the wall is not just a wall. If that's all it was, it wouldn't do any good at all. It's part of a broader system. They have cameras everywhere. And they have sensors underground in certain places. So if people walk over them, they can tell remotely that somebody is passing through there. So, they've got, and there's a lot of Border Patrol agents. And so, the surveillance is actually quite significant. In fact, there's one thing I remember several months ago, Secretary Noem, DHS Secretary Noem, made a big deal of painting some of the fence black because that would, the sun, it would absorb the sun and be hot and hard to cross. Yeah. It's actually the opposite of what they need. They need them white so that the cameras at night can detect people crossing over, the contrast between the white fence and the people. So, but the point is, yes, there's eyes all over the border. And not just that, they even have these blimps. They're kind of stationary blimps that are anchored to the ground so they can see, much farther if you're, 200 feet up in the air. So that's why I was saying earlier, they know much better than any in earlier years. They know what's coming over, even if they don't grab them all. And they do grab pretty much all of them now, but even if they didn't, they definitely know that they're there. The eyes on the border are 100%, 1,000% better than they used to be.
We're speaking today with Mark Krikorian from the Center for Immigration Studies. And friends, he's just come out of a meeting a short while ago speaking in a hallway here. That's why you're hearing some of the echo, but the information here is so very important today. And Mark, I know the Trump administration has been cracking down on the Mexican cartel, and I understand that they've actually built tunnels to smuggle drugs and weapons and people across the border, places like El Paso and San Diego. Unfold what is happening with these tunnels.
Yeah, the tunnels are actually an old story. went, I guess it was earlier this year, we went to Arizona, Douglas, Arizona, which is where the first of those drug tunnels was uncovered. And it was Chapo Guzman, the drug cartel, the drug guy. He had his people dig a tunnel from a house on the Mexican side, and then it came up in this vehicle shed on the Arizona side. And interestingly enough, he had the opening on the Mexican side. It was in a house. He had it under a pool table, a billiard table, and it was on a hydraulic lift. So they would lift it up, move the drugs through, and then put it back down. So this tunnel thing is a real thing, and one of the things the big, beautiful bill has is extra money for new tunnel detection technology. We do a lot of that on the Korean border because the North Koreans try to use tunnels. They have a lot of tunnels. And so the Border Patrol does some of that, but they're actually going to be expanding their surveillance of that sort of thing.
Yeah, some of that sounds pretty sophisticated.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, look, these drug guys, they're making money hand over fist. And so, yeah, they can afford, the most sophisticated weaponry. Some of them, they even have these, they call them submarines. I mean, they're not submarines like in the movies. They're basically boats that are mostly underwater. But the point is, it's hard to see, hard to detect, and they have this sophisticated tunnel technology. So, yeah, if you got enough money, you can buy pretty much anything you want.
Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Mark Krikorian is our guest, executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about our roadways and what's happening there, and even regarding the staggering, the announcement that just came out this week from Secretary Sean Duffy regarding the California Department of Motor Vehicles admitting to illegally issuing 17,000 commercial driver's licenses to foreign nationals who were not legally eligible to receive them. More mayhem coming on the roads? Well, we'll talk about it in just a moment.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, what can you tell me about those huge flying reptiles?
Chris, some of the flying reptiles were as large as a mid-size aircraft. Some people have wondered how in the world they could have ever flown. As it turns out, they really couldn't fly in today's atmosphere. There's not enough air pressure to keep them up. Creationists have long supposed that the environment before the flood was quite different than now. We suspect that air pressure was quite a bit higher than now, making it more reasonable that these huge creatures could fly. Recently, an engineer built a model of one of these flying reptiles and tried to make it fly. He found that it had many wonderful adaptations to increase the flying ability, but there still wasn't enough air pressure to keep it aloft. To evolutionists, it's a big mystery, but to creationists, we at least have a plausible theory. And we get that by going back to Genesis.
For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. The battle over illegal immigration, our topic today. Mark Krikorian is our guest, the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. Friends, check out their website. If you want to stay abreast of what's going on immigration issues, go to CIS.org, sign up for their releases as they come forth, sometimes many a day that are coming forth. They're writing on various topics and issues pertaining to immigration, both legal and illegal immigration, and we're discussing some of those issues here today on the broadcast, but again, that's CIS.org. Mark, some staggering news came out Tuesday of this week from Sean Duffy, Secretary of Transportation, regarding the California Department of Motor Vehicles admitting to illegally issuing 17,000 commercial driver's licenses to foreign nationals who were not legally eligible to hold them. That's a jaw-dropper.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, this isn't like, say, some of the other issues where a state wants to give, say, welfare to illegal immigrants. Well, it's bad, but it's mainly the problem for the people who live in that state. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that these commercial driver's licenses, it's not even a regular driver's license. This is the authorization to drive one of these gigantic trucks.
Right.
And the idea that they could get away with this, there's no federal oversight, but there hasn't been enough. And the federal government really needs to crack down, because if California gives a driver's license to an illegal immigrant who can't read road signs, well, that matters to people Wisconsin and Alabama and Massachusetts because that truck could go anywhere.
Right.
And, in fact, we've seen some of these terrible deaths in other states, not in California, but they were with California driver's licenses.
I understand there was an audit done in California finding some 25% of CDL records sampled in the state there failed to comply with federal law.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, is that unlike some of these other areas of immigration, authorization to give out commercial driver's license is strictly regulated by federal law, and the federal government, certainly under the previous administration, wasn't doing its job of oversight. If you're going to let the states be the one to do these licenses, rather than take it over and make it a purely federal responsibility, which we may need to think about, but if you're going to let the states be the ones to do it, you need to hold them accountable. And California is the biggest state. Yeah. It's not like North Dakota was doing something and it sort of, was below the radar and it fell between the cracks. This is California. So it's terrible, but I don't think they're going to be able to get away with this from now on, even if administrations change. I think the idea now that they're going to be allowed, the Department of Transportation would allow them to basically get away with this stuff without any oversight, I think that's over.
And it all seems to come at the blessing of California's governor, Gavin Newsom. I mean, he's been fighting immigration laws.
Oh, absolutely. Not just him, the whole legislature, let's face it.
Yep.
And the people elect those people. So, this is, absolutely. There's really this, it's kind of what one writer calls a neo-Confederate attitude, where they can just decide which federal laws they're going to comply with and which they're not. And again, if it's a thing like welfare eligibility, well, then that's on you. You're paying for it. This, your problem. This is not that. This affects everybody.
Right.
And that can't be allowed to continue. They cannot be allowed to keep doing that.
Yeah. Horrible deaths, as you've mentioned. The question is, how do we get a handle on this? 17,000 drivers. I know they did a crackdown recently in Oklahoma, and numbers are staggering there. The number of drivers, a percentage of drivers that were driving illegally, so to speak, receiving one of these CDL licenses. Do we need more of these kind of operations here to purge our roadways?
Yeah, you need both things. You need the states doing it, and in addition, Oklahoma, Indiana's doing something similar, so that when trucks cross from Illinois, they have a weigh station. You've seen those on highways where trucks have to pull over to, check that they're not overloaded, which damages the roads. Well, when they do it, they have state troopers check, and they have ICE there, and they check people's driver's licenses. But you also need federal action, and what's happened at the federal level is the Department of Transportation has told those California license holders that are, illegally have those licenses, they actually sent all of them notices saying this license will be revoked in 60 days. Mm-hmm. So you need to take action both at the federal level and the states, at least the states that are willing to act. And Florida, for instance, is also acting. They've sued California because that's where one of these terrible accidents was in Florida. So the state of Florida is suing California for having issued these driver's licenses illegally. So anyway, like I said, we need action both at the state level and at the federal level, and we're starting to see it.
So let's move from this issue to Portland, Oregon. I know there's been quite a back and forth going on there regarding the use of the National Guard troops to protect the ICE officers. They're not alone in this, but Portland has really been a kind of a back and forth issue on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, Portland, look, back in 2020, remember when there was all the stuff with the statues down and all that BLM riots and all that. Portland was one of the places where that happened, so it's natural there. It's and see, the thing is with the National Guard is that the National Guard is not going out arresting people. They're being sent by the federal government. They're being nationalized by the federal government to protect federal buildings and federal officers. And so that's perfectly legitimate. They're trying to fight it in court, but they're not going to get away with that, in my opinion, although it's still, the litigation is still ongoing. Mm-hmm. But, it is outrageous that you have state officials trying to prevent the federal government from protecting federal buildings because the locals won't do it, which is, again, what we saw in 2020, and we're seeing a sort of much smaller but immigration-related replay now.
And isn't that baffling that the locals would not do it? I mean, when when we see what's going on with with the crime issue in so many of these cities, and you would think that they would welcome that kind of relief, and yet they're fighting it.
You would think they would welcome ICE, cooperation in regular, circumstances. For instance, one of the reasons ICE has to go out and do these arrests in the neighborhoods is because the sanctuary jurisdictions won't let them into their jails. If they just let ICE into the jails so that they would process the people who are arrested for state crimes, like drug dealing or drunk driving or beating up your wife or whatever it is, ICE would have its hands full processing these people. And so sanctuary policies do only one thing. The only thing they do is protect criminals.
Yeah.
They don't protect illegal immigrants in general. They protect only criminals. That's the point. And it's just appalling that the citizens of these communities tolerate that.
Yeah, and speaking of appalling, let's talk about Chicago, because there's been a hotbed of activity going on there. A shooting attack on Border Patrol agents. I understand they now have a suspect, but I asked the question, where is the mayor? Where's the governor to call to stop this violence? I mean, what's going on in Chicago has been atrocious.
Yeah, well, look, this is Trump's arrangement, I got to say. It doesn't matter whether you voted for him or not, but the fact is, if he says it, the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois are going to say the opposite. If Trump said it would be a really good idea to take a shower every day, they'd stop bathing just because Trump said it. It's that irrational. And that wouldn't be such a big deal, frankly. It wouldn't be surprising. But when you're talking about immigration enforcement, it really becomes a serious problem. And, one of the reasons they get away with it is because the places that suffer from letting these criminals back out on the street are themselves immigrant neighborhoods and are less likely to have a kind of voice to express concern. You see what I mean? In other words, it's the people who are affected most by these policies, harmed by these policies, are the ones who are least likely or least able to make their concerns felt.
Governor Pritzker, he very well may have presidential aspirations, a lot going on in the rumor mill, et cetera, but don't his actions speak volumes to us as what he would do if he were elected president, namely that of opening wide these borders once again?
Yeah, God forbid. It's incredible to imagine what would happen. First of all, I don't think it's very likely in his case, but yes, it's not just him. Governor of California is also thinking of running for president, so that would need to be, one of the first things people ask. He's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to recreate what we saw over the past 4 years? And kind of get them to commit to either say yes or to say no. Either way, it's something they have to be and will be pressed on, regardless of who the Republican nominee is. That's not something they're going to just kind of let go. They're going to be all over them, whether it's J.D. or whether it's Rubio or whoever it is. That is going to be one of their top issues. It's not just to say, look, Republicans control the border. They're also going to say, if you elect this guy, you're going to have a replay of what you saw under Biden.
Yeah. I saw a story, and this is why it's so mind-blowing. I just saw a story at Newsmax yesterday that talked about Chicago having a dramatic double-digit decline in violent crime since the launch of DHS's Operation Midway Blitz. Shootings down 35%, robberies down 41%, carjackings down 48% since the operation began. People ought to welcome and applaud those numbers, and yet you've got the mayor and the governor fighting against it.
Yeah, they're pro-crime, I guess. That's what it amounts to. And there's two reasons for those huge drops. One is they're actually taking people into custody who are real dirtbags and bad guys. But also, just their presence means that, criminals just sense that they don't have the same impunity because there's law enforcement everywhere. So, you'd think they'd welcome it. They'd have a party for them. But no, they think it's the worst thing ever. And they're, the mayor of Chicago is not putting out a hit on ICE agents, but it's like the Latin Kings, I think, is the gang that put out a hit to kill ICE agents.
Yeah.
But it's not like the mayor and the governor really are all that broken up about it, let's face it.
Mark Krikorian with us today. CIS.org is a website. On another issue, DHS I received a release from them this morning, Mark, of a criminal alien voting illegally multiple times in Kansas. And Mark, I'm really believing that this is not an isolated case, that there are many illegal votes that have been happening around this country.
Oh, yeah, sure. I don't think it's enough that it actually, swayed like a presidential election. But absolutely, there's no question that significant numbers and in close races, in some places, it can matter. The interesting thing really is, though, that I think most of the non-citizens voting illegally are probably legal immigrants, not illegal, just ones who haven't become citizens yet. And in a lot of cases, we're kind of putting them in a difficult situation, not difficult, but we're putting them in a situation where the DMV is required to give them a voter registration form, whoever they are, when they go to get a driver's license. That's the federal motor voter law. And, you're some guy with a sixth-grade education from Honduras. You're not reading the fine print. I wouldn't even know what the fine print says. And so they're like, yeah, okay, well, the government person gave it to me, so I filled it out and gave it back to them. Again, I'm not letting anybody off the hook here, but we need to be a lot clearer and not basically lure people into registering or voting illegally. So, this is mostly on them, but it is partly on us, too.
Friends, a quick break here today as we're speaking with Mark Krikorian from the Center for Immigration Studies and just getting an update on what's going on with our nation's security at our borders here at this point. There are many communities and states that are actually fighting against the Trump administration who are trying to bring safety and security back to the nation here once again. After the break, we're going to be hitting some additional issues here, even about New York City, hinting at the officers there arresting ICE agents. That would be problematic. And we're going to find out, too, what's happened to all the children that went missing under the Biden administration. And also want to touch on the refugee admission cap for this year of 2026, limits now set by the Trump administration, and then also about what the impact on health care and the SNAP programs are. We'll be back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
The one book that's been credited as one of the major catalysts for the modern creationist movement is The Genesis Flood, authored by Dr. John Whitcomb and Dr. Henry Morris. More than 60 years ago, these two men joined together to write a controversial book that sparked dialogue and debate on Darwin, Jesus, science, the Bible, evolution, creation, and gave birth to the modern creation science movement. While skeptics cast doubt upon the authenticity of a universal flood, the Genesis Flood places before the reader the theological and scientific basis for a literal acceptance of the biblical account. This book provides illustrations, charts, diagrams, and sound documentation that harmonizes science with biblical truth. The Genesis Flood is available for a donation of $30 or more to VCY America. Call 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on the VCY American Network. Mark Krikorian is with us today, Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies. And we're talking about the battle over illegal immigration, so many issues that are coming forth every day. And friends, it goes beyond just what's happening at the borders. Yes, the encounters are way, way, way down. And those encounters, many are being apprehended. They're not being released into society, I should say, but are being detained and hence many people said, I don't want that, and they're not going to attempt coming in here across our borders. But in the meanwhile, millions upon millions upon millions are in our country illegally, and we have seen the likes of the Borders Are Homan and the DHS Secretary, Kristi Noem, and others that have been very vigilant as far as bringing apprehensions and deportations here across this nation. I'd like to just have you discuss New York City. There's going to be a whole new direction that this city takes. We have seen them, as a sanctuary city, but I believe we're going to see some new levels with the newly elected mayor there, who has even hinted as to officers arresting ICE agents. I mean, really, Mark?
Yeah, now, there's actually stuff he can do before that, because the current mayor, Eric Adams, he actually kind of a little bit lifted up or weakened the sanctuary policy. So he was actually doing a little bit of cooperation with ICE on people who were, real dirtbags, violent people they wanted out. And so the new guy will stop that. But the idea that the NYPD is going to go out and arrest an ICE agent is preposterous. I mean, the officers just won't do it. You know what? That's not going to happen. There's no way that law enforcement is going to tolerate that. I mean, as it is, his relationship with the NYPD is going to be pretty strained. They're not big fans of his anyway. For him to tell them, you go out and arrest ICE agents, they're just going to, what do I know? Nobody's told me anything, but I can pretty much guarantee you that the police commissioner is just going to say, no, we're not doing that. Sorry.
Yeah, there's concern that there's going to be quite an exodus of officers there, too, leaving quite a vacuum there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what we saw, after all the riots and the Black Lives Matter and the defund the police riots and everything. A lot of guys were just like, yeah, okay, sorry. First of all, some of them who stayed on the job just sort of parked under a tree and said, yeah, okay, well, we're not going to take any chances. But a lot of people left. They went either to other jurisdictions or they just found other jobs. You're going to see the same thing happen.
So let's talk about the children that went missing under the Biden administration. What is that status?
There's been some reporting on that, some congressional research oversight. What we did is we filed a Freedom of Information Act request, and we had to sue. We got some of the information back, and what we found is that for the first 2 years of the Biden administration, we're still suing to get more information. First 2 years, half of the unaccompanied underage illegal immigrants, most of them teenagers, but they're all minors, half of them that the Health and Human Services Department delivered to sponsors, so-called sponsors, half of them they lost track of. They called, they're supposed to do follow-up calls to find out what's going on with them. Half of them, they don't know where they are or what's going on. And we actually, what we added to this is not only do we get that percentage, because some, like I said, there's been some reporting on this, but also we have zip codes. In other words, it's on our website. We have an Excel spreadsheet that says by zip code how many people of these unaccompanied children they lost track of by zip code. So it's outrageous. And, the Biden administration just wanted to get these people, these kids, out of custody because the activist groups didn't want it. And in a lot of cases, they handed them over to their relatives or something, which is okay for the kids, although it's ridiculous as policy. But in a lot of cases, they've been handed over to labor traffickers, sex traffickers. The New York Times even has done reporting on this. It's so bad. So if the New York Times is criticizing a Biden immigration policy, then it has to have been pretty bad. This is just adding some more detail about how bad it really is.
Mark, President Trump has just set a refugee admission cap for 2026. We're told it's the lowest level. Tell us about this cap.
Yeah, each year the law says the president can set the ceiling, the cap of how many people are brought in as refugees, formally through the refugee program. And for this current fiscal year, we're in fiscal year 2026, even though on the calendar it still says 2025, he set the number at 7,500 for the whole year, which is half the 15,000 he had set in earlier administration, which was already the lowest level ever. So, yeah, this is they really reined this in, and they should be, because there are individual instances of people who really have nowhere else to go and no other options and can't stay where they are one more second. But there's not that many people like that. Most of the people we let in as refugees really have other options and would be better helped and more effectively helped where they are. We, in fact, did research on this. It costs 12 times as much to bring a refugee here as it does to take care of them where they are, like, say, a Syrian who is in Turkey, for instance. And it's just wrong to bring in somebody, one person who basically wins the lottery, and use all of the money that could have helped 11 more people in addition to him. It's just wrong, and I think the administration is understanding that, and that's why they've cut the program way back.
And we have not seen historic lows like this in quite some time?
Ever.
I
mean, this is the lowest. Yeah, in 1980 is when Congress set up the current system for refugees, and it's literally never been. This is the lowest number ever.
Mark, by the way, friends, if you'd like to get online here with your questions or brief comments here as it relates to the battle over illegal immigration, our phone number to Crosstalk is 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. With the government shutdown now over, I know that there's been a whole lot of analysis and so forth, just kind of looking at things like the SNAP program, the food stamps and so forth, and I'd like you to comment on how the illegal aliens have impacted our health care, and we know this was part of the holdout is to try and use lots of money here for providing illegal alien health coverage. But how have they impacted our health care as well as the SNAP programs?
Yeah, the SNAP program, which is the food stamps, basically, is the shorthand word for it, is something like half of non-citizens half of non-citizens with children in the household are using food stamps. And so what that means is this is not a moral critique. In other words, it's not like somebody in Honduras is saying, boy, I want to get to America so I can get food stamps for my kid. Mm-hmm. It's that immigrants are a mismatch for our economy. So they come here and they get jobs, they all work. But, how much money can you earn as a janitor or as a hanging drywall or something like that? You can't, literally, these guys can't feed their own children. And we're a civilized society. We're not going to let children starve. The question is, why do we have an immigration system that's letting in people who just, no fault of their own, are never going to be able to earn enough money to even feed their own children, and they're going to have to require the taxpayer support. That's insane. And yet that's what we're doing and are continuing to do to some degree.
Yeah, wow. Let's go to the phone lines here. We've got Eric calling in from Palm Desert, California. Eric, you're on the air.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I think they need to ramp these enforcement efforts up. We're not seeing we're seeing results, but if you see cooperation between the state officials, particularly the mayors and the police chief of these cities, you're going to see some fantastic results that no one could ever have imagined. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing right now is exactly what needs to be done from the Trump administration, but with this lack of cooperation from these local officials, you're really harming the police, you're harming the community, and you're not getting the results needed because of that cooperation, the lack of cooperation. Yeah. And I think it's a disgrace, seriously.
Okay, thank you for the comments here. Mark, let me have you respond to this because there are many. I mean, look at the resistance that is coming against this administration as it relates to this very matter. And as the caller pointed out, if there would be cooperation, wow, Katie barred the door as to what really could happen as far as bringing safety and security to the nation.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, we actually estimated that a little more than half of the total illegal population lives in sanctuary jurisdictions. The state of California, the state of Illinois, and then all kinds of cities. Mm-hmm. It's more than half. And so, in a sense, they're protecting these illegal immigrants and making it harder to deport them. And the other problem is that there's a limit because of the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, which says that states have, certain rights against the federal government. There are limits on what the feds can do to force states to change their policies. And so this is something that we're always trying to get around. The feds can withhold certain funds, but the funds have to be related to the policy you're objecting to. You can't say no education money or no highway money if you're, a sanctuary city or something. Mm-hmm. Courts won't let them get away with that. So there are real challenges here. The caller's right, obviously. If the big cities, if L.A. and New York and Dallas or whatever, Houston, were working, or Chicago, were working with the feds, we'd be able to do a much better job here. But, this is part of the challenge that the administration faces.
Our number is 800-733-9829. Mark, you're on the air from Monroe. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to point out just how absurd Mamdani's policies would be. He wants to use social workers to deal with criminals, but in contrast, he wants to use police officers to arrest ICE agents.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, if that isn't topsy-turvy, upside down, backward, and whatever else you want a scenario to use on it, I mean, that's beyond ridiculous.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. It really is beyond ridiculous. And yet, Mark, at the same time, I mean, it's in excess of 50% of the voters propelled him into office.
Yeah, I mean, H.L. Mencken 100 years ago wrote that democracy is the theory that the common people should get what they want, and they deserve to get it good and hard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's going to happen, and we'll see. If people rethink and sort of rethink their vote 4 years from now. But it's going to be bad news for the people of New York, frankly. And you can say, "Well, it's New York. Who cares? It's Babylon on the Hudson or whatever." But it's our biggest city. It's our country, and this is just bad news for all of us.
Perhaps our financial capital.
Yeah, exactly.
When we see what's coming forth from New York, and friends, at the same time, you see the impact, and again, I just lay out before you, listeners, when you see the actions that are being taken by like a Governor Pritzker or Governor of California here too, it's forecast, in my opinion, what would be like under their presidency. If they should actually pursue and win the presidency, they are forecasting exactly the actions that they would take in that regard. So we are going to take I'm referring to Governor Newsom. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back to more of your phone calls. Our number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. Mark Krikorian is with the Center for Immigration Studies. Their website is CIS.org. They're an independent, nonpartisan research organization, and they examine and critique the impact of immigration on the United States, both legal and illegal immigration. Stay informed. Check out the articles that they have on their site. Sign up. You'll get them in your email as well. And that's CIS.org. We'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Last week on my radio broadcast, a young man from Michigan called in. His name is Drew. And he went on to describe how he's an attorney. So he's someone who's gone to college, he's gone to law school, he's someone that knows how to collect information and data together. But he said that he stumbled on our broadcast. I think he was providentially led to our broadcast. And there he heard me lay out the clear gospel, just what's in the Bible. And he believed and was saved. Then he laid out in a lengthy email to me over the weekend all the remarkable things the Lord has done for him, his children, his wife. But he thanked us because there are so many gospels out there, so many people that are adding to the gospel, taking away from the gospel, making the gospel so confusing. I hope this encourages you to preach what Jesus preached. All who desire may come. All. Preach the gospel to everyone. There are people eager to hear it. I'm Brandon House.
Mark Krikorian with us here today from the Center for Immigration Studies. Just before we pick up our next caller, Mark, I understand this week a Democrat Senate staffer caught on video posing as a lawyer for a deported illegal alien. I mean, that coming from the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, I mean, it's just absurd. It was a Senate, I think Senator Duckworth's staff member, and, they're breaking the law, and they're, I don't know, they think they can just get away with it.
Yeah. Lines are packed here. Holding the longest is Christine in Racine, Wisconsin. You're on the air, Christine.
Hi, Mr. Krikorian. I know you're the expert in this area, but I just need to ask. The damage seems to be untold with the reapportionment of the House seats because of the illegal immigration, and then you have cities like like here in Wisconsin, you got Racine, you have Milwaukee. They wouldn't call themselves a sanctuary city, but they operate as sanctuary cities if you know anything about our corrupt mayors. And that's just the way it's happening. I've been a victim of crime on numerous occasions, and when you do try to talk to people about what's happening, unless it's happened to them, I'll tell you something, sir. I don't mean to be harsh, but I think we have a very, very willingly ignorant population and just downright stupid at times. Please forgive me, but this has been my experience in trying to wake people up. Unless they're harmed personally, they just want to close their eyes. I don't know. I don't know what you.
Yeah,
but I think immigration itself. Don't you think it should be just dialed back and closed off altogether, even legal immigration right now, until we can fix some of this?
It should be significantly reduced across the board. There's no question. And the sanctuary city issue is interesting, just because we actually have a map. We're the only one that have a map of all the sanctuary cities in the country, and you can hover over it and see what the situation is in your community. So if you just Google, sanctuary city map CIS, it'll pop right up.
Well, thank you, Christine. Dave in Santa Fe, New Mexico, you're on the air.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. I don't understand is why President Trump can't use the War Powers Act that they passed in 1917 to go and pick up all these governors that aren't following the constitutional mandates. They did the same thing in the southern states during the Civil War. So why can't you do it nowadays? There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to have the power to do that.
Any comment on that, Mark?
There's all kinds of steps short of that they need to take. There's, they need to withhold money from states to try to get them to change policy. But ultimately, they may end up having to file criminal charges in some cases where the local jurisdictions are actually meeting the definition of harboring illegal immigrants. That may well come. I actually don't want it to come to that, because that really does create a kind of constitutional crisis, but it may end up having to come to that.
Thank you, Dave. Pamela is calling from Michigan. Pamela, you're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon. Excellent topics this afternoon, gentlemen, I have to tell you. I have two comments. One, when all this was happening and the government shut down, us hardworking people that do pay our dues, I was amazed that 40 million people are on the SNAP program. 40 million people. We live in America. That was shocking to me, first of all. My other comment is, of all the things that are being said and done in politics today, does everybody forget that we are called the United States? I've never seen us more divided in my 65 years. I think we should start focusing on a campaign called Let's Get Back United States.
Well, thank you for your call.
Yeah, there's the point she makes is good, and what we're seeing is, and I mentioned this earlier, is that a lot of these states are engaging in what you could very meaningfully describe as neo-Confederate policies, where they're basically saying we get to pick and choose what federal laws we're going to follow, and that's you can't. There's no way to run our country.
Yeah, thank you, Pamela, for your call. Appreciate it. Let's see. Next is Dusty in New Mexico. Hi, Dusty. You're on the air.
Hi there. I saw a candid video of a man in New York City trying to vote, and he tried to show them his ID, and they wouldn't accept his ID. They just had him sign his name with nothing to compare it to, and he was very frustrated that they wouldn't take his ID. So therefore, there was plenty of people that were voting in New York City that may or may not, most likely not, have been able to register or be registered to vote. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, the immigration angle here is that most Americans have no problem showing ID. Everybody has ID. When you go to 7-Eleven, you need to show ID. So the only reason you would say you don't have to show ID is for people who are ineligible to be able to vote, whether they're non-citizens or what have you. And there's no excuse for that. There just isn't.
Thank you for your call. We're down to just 2 minutes left in the broadcast. We're not able to grab in any more calls. Mark, I know you're also kind of monitoring what's happening within the topic of asylum reform and discussions on a UN treaty dealing with this issue, whether we should be withdrawing from that or not withdrawing.
Yeah, we have that's our podcast, in fact. If you go anywhere that do podcasts, it's called Parsing Immigration Policy, or just our website at CIS.org. And the question is, should we get out of the UN Refugee Treaty? That's the one that sets the rules for asylum. And I think we should. I think as a practical matter, we do. Theoretically, you could reform the laws, our domestic laws, without pulling out of the agreement, out of the treaty. I just don't think it's going to happen otherwise. And I just got information that they actually are considering that in the White House. In other words, I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's on the table. They're actually thinking about it and looking at the question. So, stay tuned.
Yeah, in my opinion, the more we withdraw from the UN, the better off we are.
Yep. Yeah, I agree, absolutely. And it's not even just that treaty. There's something called the Convention Against Torture. It sounds good, who's for torture? But it also prohibits our deporting people who say, oh, if you send me back home, I'm going to be tortured. That's a decision we should make, not be bound by some kind of treaty. So, yeah, broadly speaking, these international multilateral treaties are a problem.
Yeah. Mark, we just want to thank you for joining us and on the program today, coming out from some meetings and so forth you've been in today, but joining our listeners to help us all stay informed and educated on this matter of immigration and keeping our borders safe and our country safe as well. Thank you so much.
Happy to do it anytime. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye now. Mark Krikorian with us here today, and friends, again, their website, CIS.org, CIS.org, and on the road traveling, and was able to get away from meetings here and speak to us here just even in the hallway in order to keep you informed on critical issues, addressing things that perhaps you don't get from other sources. But we thank you for tuning in to Crosstalk each and every day. Lord willing, tomorrow, a news roundup day coming here on Crosstalk. We invite you to join in each and every day. God bless you, friends. Thank you for joining us here today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.